This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I'm here with Angelo Pavan of Cave Spring Cellars, and we are here in the barrel cellar. How are you today, Angelo?
Oh, very well now that the sun has come out. I mean, it started raining yesterday and all night and this morning, so we didn't think we'd get any picking done for a few days, but we'll be back at it soon.
Excellent. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself at Cave Spring and exactly what you do here.
Okay. So it goes back. How did I get here? Well, it's quite simple how I got here. Len and I are Len Pinichetti, the president of Cave Spring. I'm the VP and winemaker. We've known each other since the age of 5. I think we started in kindergarten together, and then through grade school and high school. Even went to the first undergraduate university. So we've known each other forever, so to speak. And it was when we were both in graduate school. But myself, actually we're both philosophers, academics by training. And when I was doing my graduate work in philosophy, I got the wine bug. I took a couple of courses on, wine appreciation, sensory analysis, and I thought it was a bunch of hooey, because being Italian background, obviously, I was weaned on wine, right? Breastfed wine. But I remember as a little kid having, maybe an ounce of wine, and half an ounce of wine and water. And it was always part of our daily, diet, beverage. So hearing about this, taking these wine appreciation courses and analyzing wines and stuff, I thought, let's see what it's about. Anyway, long story short, great teacher. And when I say about great teachers having an influence on their students, I was so jealous. I remember the first one, how the guy could just go through and, identify not just the varieties, like Cabernet Sauvignon, find where's it from, Napa, Bordeaux, how old is it? And so I took some more courses, and then at home I started buying wines. I started buying Premier Cru Burgundies. That was pretty expensive as a graduate student, and I was married. I was already married, had kids at that time. But anyway, so I started, tasting blind, and then making notes, and then going back, over the week and blind tasting, see if I could identify the wines. And from there, it led to I realized that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a university teaching. Probably much more fun making wine because I really enjoyed the wine. And I thought, geez, I just can't go and buy this stuff. It's too expensive. Like I really acquired a tasting for white and red Burgundy. Anyway, so Len had already planted some vineyards at Cave Spring in the 70s. We were talking now 85, 86. And we were making homemade wine together actually in his basement. I can remember bottling it right out of the barrel, our first attempts. But then in 86 he called me up and he said he had met a few people locally who were interested in starting a winery and liked to have me along to think about it. Spend a couple of days. I said, just wait a second. I counted to 5 and I said, I'm there. So that's how we started Cave Spring. 25 years ago exactly. This is our 25th vintage.
Really?
Next year will be our 25th anniversary. And so my job here is to make the wine.
Now, what would you say sets Cave Spring apart from many of the other wineries around about here? And what do you specialize in? Okay,
what sets us apart right from day one actually, when we made the move to be 100% vinifera. Because back 25, 30 years ago, there were only a few wineries, less than 10, but there was a lot of hybrid, Vidal and Baco. And we said no, we just wanted to make wine from vinifera because it just happens to be the best family of vines that grape varieties that make the best wine. So we took that risk, and then from there, it was our first vintage actually. We made a Riesling. Len had planted some Riesling in '78. There was very little Riesling around. But that's our specialty. When I'm traveling around and then, I introduce myself as Angelo Pavan at Cave Spring and go, oh, I love your Riesling. So that's our specialty. Half our production is Riesling in a number of styles. And our specialty here, our focus has always been, let's go back, first of all, terroir. The site, where we are in the Beamsville Bench. We coined that term way back in the 80s, actually put it on the label before it was officially a VQA term. So the site, and I'll say it, I'm proud. I think it's the Grand Cru site in not just in Niagara, but in Ontario. the slope there. So it's the terroir, and then the focus on varieties that do well here. Instead of chasing every variety, not to mention people are growing Syrah and Semillon. I mean, I planted Semillon, I ripped it out. It just doesn't work.
And you made Syrah also, didn't you?
We did, we don't
Yes,
anymore,
yeah,
okay?
right, okay.
You learn, okay? That's age and experience. But Riesling, for sure is a variety that's extremely well here. And the nice thing about Riesling, it's a variety that's not well suited to most wine growing areas of the world, right? Like I always say, you can grow Chardonnay from the Arctic to the Antarctic. If it's too cool to ripen, you make sparkling wine. And if it's really warm, you make those peach bombs, right? Riesling is, it's very finicky, and our sites here on the bench are great for Riesling.
Now, you've also made some rather stellar Chardonnays in your time. What are your thoughts on Chardonnay in Niagara?
Yeah, well, that's another one. I mean, Chardonnay, that's, I guess, when you think of the first varieties, there's a little bit of Riesling, but it was Chardonnay. And it's in question also that we can do very well with Chardonnay. More of a Burgundian climate here, right? So we're not going to get those fat fruit bombs that you get from the warmer areas. But because of a cooler climate, we can make Chardonnays that really hold up well, that really age well. Let me tell you a story actually reminding me about this. I remember doing a tasting in Buffalo at one of the big wine shops there. And I did a vertical of our CSV Chardonnay, that's our top-end Chardonnay. And then the wine manager, when he looked at the wines I brought, he said, maybe we should taste these first. And I said, why? He says, well, some of these are old. They're older. They're over 5 years old. And are they holding up? And then the light bulb went off in my head. They're used to selling Napa Chardonnays. They're great within the first 5 years, not the next 5 years. So I said, no, don't worry about it. He tasted a couple, did the tasting. They were shocked at how well those wines are holding up. And that's the nice thing about Chardonnay here. More complexity, it's not the richness, the fatness, but the minerality, but definitely wines for aging.
Now, when you make your forays into the world of red wine, what do you feel is working particularly well for you right now?
Okay, one variety that does well, but it's difficult, that doesn't have the cachet, is Gamay, right? Gamay Noir. People, when I think of Gamay, they think of lighter Beaujolais. So,
but you've made some really fantastic Gamay in your time.
And some estate Gamays.
Yes,
I mean, our O2 Gamay estate, I think, is arguably one of our best reds we've ever made. And the 07 is out now. We're just releasing the 07 Gamay estate. And I tell people, think of Barolo. In other words, blacktop. It's got that blacktop smell to it and taste. So yeah, you can definitely make Gamays here that age well. And also to have complexity. A friend of mine who is from Sonoma, and actually he represents a house, a cooperage. He comes up once a year and we have dinner together. And he was talking about how he doesn't like Gamay. So what I did, I opened a bottle. It wasn't our Gamay, it was another from a local producer that does a great job. And I said, try this Pinot here. And he said, wow, this is really good Pinot Noir. After we finished the bottle, I showed him the label, and it was Gamay. Because it really gets Pinot Noir-like complexity with age. Outside of Gamay, Pinot, again, cooler climate, it's tough with Pinot around here. But, so when I think of the varieties, Pinot is very, very difficult to do. I mean, you can see the bald spot here. That's the hair falling out from trying to work with Pinot Noir. We're learning quite a bit. It's not a variety that you can master with the first vintage or two. But yeah, there's been some really good ones, that have come out in the last couple of years. So I have high hopes for Pinot. And then the variety that we can do well in a warm year or cool year is Cabernet Franc. I think that's the workhorse Bordeaux variety here. In some years, we can get some Bordeaux-like complexity. In cooler years, think of Loire Valley. And you can do that with Cabernet Franc. Unlike Cab Sauv, that in a cool year, it's pretty green.
No, you don't have that much Cabernet Sauvignon planted, do you?
No, we really have one block that we planted. And that does well. What I do with that now, we've been doing it now for 5 years, is I take some of that, sometimes all of that block, and I dry it the way they do in Valpolicella for Amarone. only we're not trying to make Amarone. Amarone is Valpolicella. But given, I started thinking about it, my parents come from the eastern Veneto, just north of Venice. Verona's only an hour and a half away, and I thought, let's see now, to get some consistency here in Cooler, why don't we try drying some grapes? So that's what we do with Cab Sauv.
And that goes into your La Pena label?
Yeah, La Pena, which is a take on, penna is the Italian word for feather, but also pennacetti, little feather. And our logo is, I don't know if it's on here, the hawk that are there found at Cave Spring and the limestone cliff there. But yeah, it goes into La Pena, and it's a work in progress. I mean, there's no recipe to La Pena. We've done it with 100% dried grapes, and in some years just a percentage, and then blending it with our estate Cab Franc and Cab Sauv.
Now, another thing you do is your sparkling program. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's another one. This terroir and climate is really well suited to sparkling. Our first sparkler was 2002. It's interesting that there wasn't much sparkling made in the 1990s. There was a few bigger wineries, but now quite a few have jumped on board. It's a great area for traditional method. Our sparkling is traditional, classical method. In other words, fermented in the bottle, not the Charmat. And again, when you think of cool climate, what are some of the great iconic wines? Champagne. And Chardonnay here is well suited. We've worked with Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and others, but I prefer Blanc de Blanc, Chardonnay. And we get a sparkling here that is more champagne-like than anything else, and from other wine-growing regions. Because when you think of traditional method from Sonoma, the good houses there, or Napa, they can get pretty fat for sparkling wines. They're ripe. And then, and the Australians also, and a little bit that comes out of South Africa, that's perhaps a bit leaner. But in our case, we're, much more champagne-like in style.
How are you finding the 2010 vintage thus far, Angelo?
Great. It's been an early harvest. It's been warm since April. I think March was the first month on record that we didn't have any snow. Early spring, early bud break right through. Rain when we needed it. Because in other vineyards we've had warm growing seasons where we had some water stress, not enough water. The water came when we needed it. And I'm hoping that 2010 ends up being like 2002. I don't know if people know 02 is a classic vintage for us. What I mean by that is we made great whites and reds, because it's tough to do both. In a cooler year, you do the great whites, and a warmer year, the reds. But in 02, we did both very well. Our 02 CSV Riesling, for example. And we're bringing Riesling in now. I think we are going to do a great job with the whites. They're going to be a bit richer, obviously. So the Riesling had a little bit less residual sugar. Pinot Noir, I was worried it might have been too warm, but we got some really great berry jammy fruit in there. And the Merlot, I've been tasting the Merlot. It is like candy in your mouth. It is so sweet. So, it's a fun vintage because we don't have to work as hard.
Well, I look forward to tasting those wines when they are ready, Angelo. Thank you very much for joining us today at Good Food Revolution, and we look forward to catching up with you very, very soon.
Thanks.